and your listeners around the world. I mean, as always, we want to thank the Power 102 team for giving fathers and men the space for their voices and their issues to be heard. How have you been, David?
I'm good. I'm good. Taking it one day at a time.
Okay, great, man. So, this weekend is Father's Day.
Hmm.
Always an interesting time of the year for fathers, right? Because you
Yes.
hear so many conversations around um, if fathers are really appreciated, David.
Yeah. I always compare Father's Day to Mother's Day, and it's a very big gap between the both of them in comparison.
Yes, yeah. I mean, even when you're walking through the streets, right? You're seeing things for sale
Yeah.
all over for Mother's Days. You're seeing all these deals and all these sales and
Mm.
restaurants having specials, and you
Yeah.
see the world of
Hmm.
um of 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 what how do I call it? Love and affection and appreciation
Hmm.
towards mothers,
Yeah.
and which is good, eh?
Of course, we have no problem with that.
Yeah, and this is something I always tell people. People, I don't know. People believe sometimes when we talk, David, that what we're really saying is love us and don't love others, which nothing could be further from the truth, right?
Yes.
We all we saying is we deserve that love and support and affection as well.
Of course.
It's similar. Someone likened it to this movement, the Black Lives Movement, right?
Yeah.
And when it started, you would see people come out and say, "Well, white lives matter too, and this lives matter too," as if saying Black Lives Matter meant no other lives mattered.
Mhm.
And that is what we've been saying as fathers and as men.
Yeah.
That saying fathers are important does not mean that mothers are not, right? What we are saying is fathers are also important. And if we are not careful, and if we continue to break fathers, and we continue to ostracize them, and we continue to alienate them, there is a generation of young men who are growing up who are going to be fathers as well. And
Exactly.
if they don't have fathers and men to look up to because we've pushed them away,
Mhm.
then what are we leaving for that next generation, David? You know?
Mhm.
And that is something I don't think we are allowing to settle into our minds properly. I mean, I think there's a whole heap of ladies who support um, the Fathers Association
Yeah.
and the things that we advocate for, right?
Hmm.
So it'd be remiss of me not to say that. Even in my own home, my wife, um, great advocate. My mother, I grew up in a single parent home. I told you all that all the time.
Yeah.
But my mother is a huge advocate for fathers as well. She has two boys.
Hmm.
So it's not about inequality, right? But it's understanding that both parents are required to develop a whole and productive child to release into society. Because
Exactly.
look at what we're releasing into society right now, David.
Hmm.
Right? Look
Yeah.
at what we're releasing right now. And what we are seeing is a direct correlation to the of us stifling men and keeping them out of the home and keeping them out of spaces. And then somebody will come on and say, I'm certain it's the truth. They'll
Mhm.
say, well, what about them men who want nothing to do with their child? There
Yeah.
are men like that. But then that goes back to the first point I was making, David.
Yeah.
If we don't show fathers in a positive light,
Hmm.
the men who are growing up behind, this is what they will do, right? Because we're not giving them an opportunity to see fathers in a positive light. Wendell, good afternoon, brother.
Good evening, my brothers. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago.
How you doing,
Um,
brother?
I am good. How you guys doing?
I'm fine.
Okay, so I just want to jump in there with regards to what Shervon is saying. I agree 100% because in my own experience, I mean, having not grown up with a father and having grown up with a stepfather who was a ex-convict and a mother who wasn't really how shall I put it? She was the best mother that she could have possibly been. Um, but without a father growing up, I didn't really turn out well, you know, because I was severely abused and so on at the hands of my stepfather and as well as my mother because of the absence of my father. And there are a lot of things that I was told concerning my father that he had abandoned me and so on while I was growing up, only to find out that those lies that my mother had told me all my life, those things were not true, and that my father didn't really abandon me. He was pushed out of my life by my mother and my ex-convict stepfather, you know. And I could testify having a very strong desire to raise my children in a manner that they would not have suffered the way that I did, so that I purpose to be a good father against all odds. And today I see the result. And so nobody can question the validity of whether a father's presence in a child's life is an asset or not in my book, because I have put it to the test and seen it work, right? And I mean, I always say I have to give God thanks and praise that I was able to do so, because on my own in the flesh I would not have been able to do so, because I depended totally and fully on God in order to be able to parent and single-handedly raise three children by myself, you know. And even raising them by myself was a decision after having become a single parent. I decided I didn't want the input of my female relatives into my children's lives, because I believe that it would not have I would not have been able to accomplish the success in their lives that I have been able to do if they had input from other people in their lives. And I mean, I am saying all of this, but you would really have to talk to the children in order to really validate what I am saying. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I tell you, if you meet these children, when I tell you, you will meet well-rounded, grounded, God-fearing people, quite unlike what we are seeing being produced in the society today, at the hands of single mother homes. Right? I am one of the men who believe that a good father will raise um, a child or children better than any woman can. That's my opinion, right? So if you're quoting me on that, quote me, not the Single Fathers Association. Right? Quote Rondell Grant on that, because I have put it to the test. I have tested it and I have found that it is so. Right? So children need their fathers, and if today, in our present society, we do not stand up for fatherhood, and we do not identify the value of fathers in the lives of children, and we continue to produce the brokenness that we are seeing that is contributing to the crime and other dis-ease that we are witnessing in our society, then our future is not a very good one.
Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely. And folks who listening, just remember the numbers to call in is 222-8255. The toll free number is 866-525-1099. And the WhatsApp number is 318-1021. And we sent out an invite earlier today telling persons who want to call, wish their fathers a happy Father's Day. Feel free to call in and wish your fathers a happy Father's Day. Share fond memories of your dad. And we also acknowledge that this is a difficult time for many fathers who are alienated from their children or whose children may have passed away. And we want to encourage you to call as well if you fall in those categories, and share a message for the child that you've been alienated from, or just share from your heart if you have lost that child. Because sometimes we forget, gentlemen, as a society, that fathers grieve too, you know. You know, this situation we had, on very tragic and unfortunate situation we had a few months back at Port of Spain General Hospital. Hey Ruth, thanks for joining. See a message. Where we had a number of babies who died, right? And we highlighted that on this program as well. And in those situations, a lot of the time, David and Wendell, you see a lot of attention being paid to the mother's grief in that situation. And even the father in those situations, your natural instinct is to also to lend support and also to pick up your partner, right? And your spouse, and be that rock for them. Oftentimes leaving yourself undone, or not treating with your own grief in that situation, not getting an opportunity to process your own grief. Added to which, we've hammered here several times, that fathers do not have access to paternity leave on the legislative books of Trinidad and Tobago, right? But I wouldn't use all the time we have today to scream at the Honorable Attorney General and the Honorable Prime Minister and his cabinet, who at this time have ignored our cries to address that situation. But there are fathers out there grieving, either grieving because they are alienated from their children on this Father's Day. And brothers, I know that feeling too well. My two boys live with me. My oldest, which is my daughter, has not. And I have never spent a Father's Day with her. And for many years, Wendell and David, Father's Day to me was a burden. Right? For many years, I would wake up and cry. For many years, Father's Day for me was just heartbreak. Right? And yes, I have my two boys with me now, but I still miss my full circle. It still feels incomplete without her there. And so we want to acknowledge the fathers who are going through situations like this Father's Day. And we say, hey, send a message to your loved one, your son, your daughter, your sons or daughters, right? Message or call, send a message for them. It wouldn't be lost in her. There's this advocate that we've been also sharing on our page. Maddie is her first name, from the US, and she calls herself a former victim of parental alienation. She was a child growing up in the situation, and she started a movement now to bring awareness to parental alienation as a child growing up in that situation. And one of the things that she highlighted, guys, it's that when she became older and was so conflicted in herself because she was told all these horrible stories about her father shared with her letters that he had been writing to her every moment, every memorable occasion of her life, for birthdays, Christmas, graduation, all different times. And that she spoke to the power of how that unlocked and opened her heart and mind to realize that this man is not the monster that I was told that he was. So I say that to tell you all, if you're all up to it, feel free to reach out, call the numbers, message the page. There's a guy who already sent me a letter. I'll read it during the course of this program. Reach out to your kids and let them know that you are there for them and with them. It's unfortunate, though, that this is the type of conversation we're supposed to be having on a weekend like this. Wendell, David, what's your thoughts?
Yes, I'm here. I too grew up without a father, you know. I grew up with my grandfather and grandmother. and I always had this wanting to be with my father, but for some reason or the other, I don't think he wanted that because he lived at Port of Spain. I lived in La Brea, and we stayed apart up to his death, you know. And I had always liked him and loved him a lot. But growing up without a father, you know, when you mature, you tend to see what was lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have girl children. I have girls, and I was able to nurture the last one for a very long period from a very young age. So I try to instill in them what I missed from my father, because I am always of the opinion that family is what will take us to another level of positivity, and you know, the way we live as at home and stuff, you know. And a lot of people, they shy away from that. Some people not allowed or alienated, as you said, and a whole a lot of instances and what should I call it, situations kind of create that division and that separation. Sometimes it's the way how some females operate, you know. Sometimes they, what they call their wants or their needs, sometimes the father would not be able to supply or help that to come to fruition, and there's a separation, and the children suffer in the long run. So
Mm-hmm.
I on my end, I used to play father mother role. You know, it's difficult to bring up a young girl as a father, you know, but like Mr. Grant said, there's no other person who could bring up a child, boy or girl, like a father. So I think we underestimate the prowess of fathers, and we tend to keep looking at the mother's role. But without a father in a family, I think things could go haywire. Not all instances. That there are some women who are very strong. I call them women of substance. But the father plays a special kind of role, you know, that will surely take that family life to another level, a kind of more positive level, if I should put it like that. And but I've gone through that as a from little boy till, you know, I mean, I was a big man when my father died, and the beauty about that is that at that stage, although I wouldn't say he neglected me, you know, but he just I thought his growth in from a social and where labor and thing is concerned, employment and thing, he had graduated himself from Labre to Port of Spain, and I think it was a problem. You know, some people, they get into a relationship and they might have what they call a quote and unquote outside child. You know, I was like that, and I don't think his wife accepted me, or he never really told her about me. So that was a big, big problem when I had to meet with him and stuff. You know, I used to meet with him in places where I find, well, I have to meet my father here. You know, I can never go by him until I grew up to teenager and thing, and realized, oh, that's the story. She looked at me as a bastard. I'm not afraid to talk this kind of talk. You know, some people might say, "David, how you can say that on the radio?" But I did, and I am not afraid to say it, because I would like other young men, if they're going through the same thing like me, is you have to be strong, you have to be ambitious, you have to set goals for yourself, and you have to know, okay, that's how daddy moving. Well, I have to try and lead my life in a direction that will be acceptable in society. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the guys who don't have that father figure and don't have that father in the home, you know, sometimes they tend to end up on the other side of positivity. I don't want to say negative side, but
Yeah.
on a side that can create all kind of stories. Now we're hearing about all kind of different situations, LBGT, all these kind of things are influences that can change a young man's life and approach to life. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
I had
Mm-hmm.
a method of approach with my grandfather. He taught me a lot of stuff. You know, he really used to say things like, you know, like when you read in the book of Proverbs, my my grandfather was a man like that. He will tell you things, and as you go along, you have to try and cipher it out. You know, make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
who grandpa mean by that, boy. And as you go along, he will show you instances. He might say something today, and tomorrow he say, "Remember what I told you yesterday?" You know, and it went on like that, on and on and on and on. until I started to realize the value of most of what he was saying. So I grew up without a father, but my grandfather was like my father. I didn't want to accept that. I always wanted to be with my father. My father was very talented, was a very brilliant guy, and he 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 grew in stature, from youth to up to the day he died, and surprisingly, in the last of his life, that last few years of his life, you know, um, he depended on me to help him make it through. He was very sick, and I was there with him all the way. Sometimes he used to set me mad because I used to say, "Man, this man never, he was never a father to me." I can say that. I know you might have some friends who might hear that and be upset, and they will be finding it strange because he was the kind of guy who projected himself as a big man. This big Mac. The name Mac. People used to call him that, just like me. And thing about it is, I progressed in a similar fashion to him, without his help. There were times when he showed me negligence to a level that I couldn't understand. But I built up my mind and I said, "You see, me, I have to carve my own way forward."
Yeah, yeah,
So I carved my own way forward, and it seemed like I was following in his footsteps. I mean, he came out of library. He was a guy who was into accounts and stuff. He started working in Port of Spain. He bought a home in Valsain. And I too followed in his footsteps. Started off in library. I was a lab technician. I was into the refinery business, and then I too had migrated to Port of Spain and then to Arima, where I have a home there, you know. And and when I got there, he was saying, "Well, boy, I hear have a house in Arima. You invited me." I tell him flat, "No." I say, "You are not to come here at all." I say, "You could hear about that, but you're not to come here at all." But then he got very sick, and he was right there in Valse, and I was out in Arima there, and he depended on me all the way. He used to be angry when I told him I cannot come, and I used to be there as much as I could have been in it. And sometimes that used to fret me because in my mind, your mind can play games with you. In my mind, I would say, this man never did anything for me as a father. I mean, up to his death, I cannot show anything that he had done for me as a father. I'm not afraid to say this. I am
but
very
I
strong.
think, David, one of the things he did,
Yeah,
and you're talking there, which is similar to, well, my situation in that, as I said, I grew up with my mom, right? My father,
yeah.
he went to pursue the American dream. It
Mm-hmm,
didn't work out, and he didn't come back, right? Long story short.
mm-hmm,
But one of the things I learned, though, from him, and I think you learn the same from hearing you talk,
mm-hmm.
is about the type of father that we wanted to be.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that, and Wendell was saying the same about his situation too.
yeah.
I think that is really important. And us now showing our children, in your case, your daughters, the
Mm-hmm.
kind of man that they need to look up to,
Yes.
right? The kind of father they need to look for their children.
Mm-hmm.
And me the same for my boys and my daughter. So and even that in itself is a lesson.
Of course.
And in the past, right, there were men in the past who operated a certain way, right? Culture or whatever the case may have dictated how they operated, right? Number one, they were the sole breadwinners, right?
Yeah.
It was not a situation like we have now where you have two incomes coming into your home. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Niz, Elizabeth, Farid, hey, thanks for joining us, you all. So it's not a situation like now. And so the whole pressure to provide was on them.
Yeah.
And that's how they grew up, right? Knowing that they are the providers, women are the caretakers, and there was that very broad line drawn in the middle. But what I don't think has happened, and this is what I always find interesting, the role of women in society has changed, right? And in the role of women changing, the role of the man has also changed. And society has not only accepted, but society has championed the cause of the redefinition of what a woman is, right? And what a mother is in terms of professional and all of those things, right? And while the role of a father has changed as well from what it was many years ago, and men have adapted in large to that role, society has not accepted that, right? And so we are still seeing men as the breadwinner, but not accepting them as the father, even though they're playing that role in a large way. I gave a story some time ago about, and she's now deceased, God rest her soul, the security guard at my son's school, one of my son's school. And she said to me one day when I was either dropping him off or picking him up, she said, Daddy, she said, I live long enough and it has warmed my heart to see that when I was working at this school, she said, for a season, for many years, you would only see mothers bringing children to school and mothers attending PTAs and participating in school activities. She said to now, right? And even dropping off and those things, drop off and pick up. She said no. The majority of parents who are coming, who I see in drop off and pick up on a morning and evening and coming to meetings and attending activities as fathers, right? Because men have also changed, right? As I said, and supported the change and the transition of what the meaning of a woman is in the home and in society. But for some reason, we are struggling to give the same recognition and support to men in that situation. And I don't, and that it never adds up to me, Wendell, why that is that way. Wendell, you there?
Yes. So, Shervon, on that point, I always make mention of the fact that I am of the view that, and it's not only my view, but there is a view that ours is a very gynocentric society. Um, I mean, a simple example is if a woman goes to the police station, she gets immediate attention, and the police officers there who are males as well as females, but mostly males, because police officers are predominantly males. They will go beyond the call of duty to meet the needs of the woman in whatever situation that she is in. They will go as far as to sometimes immediately leave the station and go with her to the home based on her complaint or her allegations. However, when a man approaches the very same police officers, those police officers treat the man as though as if he has committed a crime, and as though as if he's lying, as though as if he's a big time criminal, right? And I have experienced that myself. I have witnessed it myself, and through the Fathers Association, I have received numerous complaints and information concerning that sort of behavior. I have female friends who, you would hear people saying that they so many years they have applied to the government housing authority for a home, and they haven't gotten a home. And I know females who have visited the minister, and within a short period of time after the visit, they get a home, right? So, the fact is that we are a gynocentric society, right? It has gotten so bad. I often say that as long as the individual is a carrier of a vagina, they will receive justice, or they will receive the attention that they require, or they will receive and be able to access help. But on the other hand, when it's a man, that man is placed in a situation. I mean, we have men in the association who have been part of the association that have been unable to access grants for being able to assist their children, even though they are single fathers. And the law says that single parents can access these grants, yet when the male try to access it or the man try to access it, they say no. The way the law is written, the man is the head of the house, so that the man cannot get the grant for the children from the government authorities. And I mean, at the end of the day, the evidence is there, and we continue to have these types of disadvantages towards men, these types of biases towards men, and we talk about it. We highlight it. We bring it to the attention of the authorities. We make proposals. We make recommendations. Some of our recommendations have been accepted, but yet nothing has been implemented.
Dr.
So
Ned
what?
says, go ahead, Bandel. I thought you had finished. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead, bro.
Oh, Dr. Ned says, God blessings to all fathers. He says, contrary to what hurt women think, men are needed in their children's lives. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you also, Dr. Niz. Now, let me say, on Dr. Niz's point, Wendell, and and this is in line with what you're saying here. While a lot of times we speak about the hurt women who utilize parental alienation tactics, a lot of what we're facing now as men, the problem is because of men, and Wendell and David. The majority of our government over the years has been men. We've had one female prime minister out of all the male prime ministers that we've had. We've been writing to a male attorney general highlighting issues impacting men. The majority of our ministers of health has been men. And yet still, when it comes to men's health, it is something that is left unattended, untreated, and discarded in this country. So the problem really stems with us, gentlemen. As much as the hurt women, the power to put the systems in place, and that goes back to what you say, Wendell, about a gynocentric society. The problem to put solutions in place, not the problem, the ability to put solutions in place, to put the frameworks in place, the processes in place, the policies in place to build strong men, which is needed for any society. We've had the ability to do so all the time, because the persons who have sat at the helm of the decision-making arms have largely been men over the years. And what we've done is really cut off our own feet and the feet of our brothers. And sometimes we have to acknowledge that truthfully, David and Wendell.
Yeah.
So that being said, gentlemen, at the end of the day, the reality is that the from the prime minister and most of the ministers in the parliament that we have put in place to represent our interests, they are all men. That's the reality. So therefore, these men are influenced by the vagina. I mean, at the end of the day, it might not sound good, because if we are men and men are needed in our society, men make up the greater part of the workforce in our society. All the utilities, the wasa, the down in the trenches are men. Up on the light poles are men. The majority of police officers are men. The majority of the armed forces are men, right? And yet still we focus on women. We focus on meeting the needs of women and neglect the needs of men in our society. What is that saying?
Yeah, correct. And you know, somebody listening out there will want to challenge. See, all they talking stupidness, boy, fellas. All they talking stupidness. But then tell us why. Tell us why we will have the suicide rates we have here in Trinidad of men, right? Men topping the charts where suicide is concerned. And I've read the stats out many times. I'll pull it out sometime during the program and quote it for you again. Right? Tell us why. And there's nothing being done to address it. Tell us why. we have males sliding downhill in terms of academic performance. And yet still we're seeing programs being put out there saying ICT for women, right? By ministries. I'm not even talking about Chuck E. Cheese, but ministries, right? Chuck E. Cheese is a private entity, and if you want to continue to carry your children there after what you've seen, that is your choice, right? But you have a choice to make. But the ministry, Chuck E. Cheese ain't getting my taxpayer dollars. The ministry is. Ministries putting on programs for girls, ICT for girls, as if, right? As if right here in Trinidad and Tobago, don't come and quote stats. Some of the last time we talk about this, people tell me about stats in other parts of the world. As if here in Trinidad and Tobago, that is an issue, that we need to segregate boys and put them in the back of the class, not in the back of the class, outside the class. For why is that? We're seeing the rate of juvenile delinquency among males has deteriorated to an all-time low and still threatening to go lower than it is right now. And yet nothing is being done to address that. Why? If we talking nonsense and we just bad talking them because we don't like this one and we don't like that party and we don't like this party, then you tell me what is being done to address those things we've listed there. What is being done to support men, to build stronger men? What is being done? I don't know, Rondell. I don't know, David. And I've said repeatedly, right? Anybody who wants to put political slants to what we say, that is your business. Because we have said all governments over the history of this country are responsible for where we are today and the
Yeah,
state of young men in the society.
I take a slightly different slant. I mean, I'm in agreement with you guys because like women, they have more leeway than men in getting things done from legal perspectives and social perspectives. But when I grew up as a youth man, the elder guys in the neighborhood played serious father figure roles. There were certain things you couldn't do when you go on the road. You couldn't break the rules or play no big timer and give them trouble. And I think that is an area where a lot of the discipline is lacking nowadays, and it's because of the attitudes of the young guys. Because we're talking about boys here, and the behavioral patterns. I think that has gone through the window. I always talk about Trinidad and Tobago throwing away traditions. I mean, back in the days, like I said, my father grew up in Library. He was an exceptional accountant. He was an exceptional sportsman, football and cricket. And when I started to grow up and had the grandfather would say, well, you could go on the playing field and play football or cricket. I too had developed as a good cricketer, especially cricket, more than football and footballer. And it was because of these guys in the neighborhood. The elder guys would have helped in nurturing and what should I say? Making sure that discipline was and respect were watchwords, and you couldn't do certain things in the public. Now, with the different influences that young men face now, it's kind of difficult for you to approach little fellas and say, well, no, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, or this is the way you do this and this is the way you do that, because there's a lack of respect for the elder guys. Now, I always talk about 4 little fellas that I try to nurture. Of the 4, there's one that sticks very close to me. So I know that he has to go home. So I'll rub it into him. Values, values are what we need to promote. We can leave the respect and discipline, you can put it on the shelf for a while, but we have to instill values, and values will help them to take discipline and respect off the shelf. They will realize that, the values is a component of the discipline and respect. So I try my best with him. I'll talk to him. I'll tell him about his education. I'll tell him about vocation. He has a choice. And in any case, if you're going to vocation, there's a lot of academia in vocation. So I try to keep him along that way. I always try to keep him behaving a kind of way. So I know when he goes home, he will tell them, he's called me Uncle David. I went by Uncle David, and Uncle David said this, and Uncle David said that, and Uncle David gave me this. So I know it will spread around the other guys who show me a lot of respect. And it's just that as they are growing up, he clings to me a lot. And I try my best with him. And there are other youths in the area that I too try. They have some respect for me, being popular and being in the media and all of that. They have a certain kind of respect for me. So I use that to get them close. I try to be their friends. I try to be, let them know, and you can trust me. I am not going to sell you out. So I think that is something that is lacking in the development of the young people, the young men, especially these days. And I know there are some guys who are willing to do likewise, like what I do with these four little fellas. And it's just that there's this kind of phobia, if I should use a word like that, towards approaching these young fellas, because sometimes you don't know what's in their mind. You don't know who they're hanging with, who their peers are. You don't know what kind of environment they're growing up in. So it's difficult to approach. But I think that is a tradition that, if implemented, we can help a lot of the young fellas, because like we all agree, from the legal standpoint and from some social developments, because it's not a standpoint, we see where men are, there's a sort of negligence towards men, and they expect men to be this and they expect men to be that. And once you fall short, you are left behind. And it shows up badly amongst the little fellas who are coming up, So I think that traditional style, they talk about the village raising the children and stuff. I think that has gone through the window, because from ever since, that legal handling of men in all aspects as compared to women was always there. And from a social point of view, it was always a different change. Things are changing every day. So you have to go with the flow and try to change with them. So I think men, grown men, should try their best to instill values in younger fellas, so that they know, well, this is the way to grow up. We have a thing that's saying men should not disrespect women at all, and men should not hit women and all of that. I agree with all of that. But likewise should be said to women, because women now, they're so liberated that they get away with a lot of stuff. They get away with a lot of stuff. So I think if we can, as grown men, if we can try our best, because it's not easy to just go and try to discipline a youth when you see him doing something wrong. I think the method of approach is to get close to the youth, as close as possible, and show him. Don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk, and show him, well, listen, values are what are really important in growing up. So my take is that beside the law, beside legislation, because we will dream of that, because there's no way that we can say that we are seeing changes coming around where that is concerned. To me, like when men reach those levels of authority, they beat their chest and walk like pigeons in Woodford Square, and that's it. We don't see
You forget
development.
about everybody after that.
Yeah, you don't see it. So I think the onus is on us who can be responsible enough and who live in areas where, it's more difficult, like where they will paint as hot zones and hot spots and things. You have to try your best to become friends first and foremost, and then show them that they can trust you and they can tell you things that will they won't tell anybody else, and you would not, betray them. I think that can bring about a different level of maturity for the young fellas who are coming up now. I think that is lacking in a big way. Because back in the days, I told you, I became a good cricketer by guys teaching me to play the game. I used to be respectable and have a certain amount of discipline by guys older than me who said, "No, you cannot do that. You don't say that to a woman. You don't hit a woman." So I grew up with that because, like I said, I did not grow up with my father. I did not even grow up with my mother. My mother was with me for a while. I grew up with my grandfather and grandmother. And my grandfather sort of followed the kind of Englishman way of living, and he worked among a lot of Englishmen, so he adapted a lot of their principles. He spoke properly, you know, he dressed like them, and he so I gravitated to a lot of his way of living and things. So I thank him all the time. He's dead and gone, and I always remember him, as that father figure, because my father did not play that role. My father was an ace sportsman. He almost represented Trinidad at one time. He played for Malvern. He was a cricketer. He was like a real superhero to me. But he never was that close to me and never played that kind of role for me. But that inspired me to be the total opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And I try my best, especially in my little partner. I call him Tishon. I try my best. He's always by me, and he's always there with me. I try to teach him as much as I can so he can pass it on to his brothers. And when the brothers are around me too, they show me the same respect and thing, because I tried my best with them. They live alone with their mother, or they live with their mother, who is the lone parent, and she isn't well. So I try my best to teach them what I can. And I
But
think the
I agree
onus
with
is
you,
on
no, David.
big
That
yeah.
mentorship is very important.
Yes, it is.
I agree with you. And to me that goes back to the original point we were making
Mm-hmm.
about if we value men, right, and we value fathers, then you would see persons available to play that role that
Yeah,
you're referring to there. Yeah.
yeah, of
But
course. Yeah.
but if we keep ostracizing them,
Mm,
then they would go into their corners. Like
mm-hmm.
you've seen there are a lot of people who do what you do there. Um, but more is needed. I agree,
Yeah,
much more is needed.
yeah, yeah.
But if we keep ostracizing men, that number of who is willing to take care of their home and their community, you will see that number just gradually decreasing. Because David, how long will someone continue to do something unappreciated and
Exactly.
undervalued?
Mm-hmm.
You know, eventually you would see persons just you would see people just pull square, as we just say here in Trinidad.
Yeah, I see it myself every day too.
Yeah, that's what you will see happening. There are people who reach out and they say, for nothing, I can't get that man involved in his children's life. And I mean, I can't relate it, right? Because as I said, growing up without my father, I had a burning desire, as Wendell said, to be present for my children, right? That created that motivation in me. So when people say that to me, don't connect, because to me, I just miss my children, right? I'll miss my children if they're away. I miss my daughter every day. But there are people who've accepted that, listen, society ain't want nothing to do with me. I go on my way. And that's what we've created.
Yes.
Despite there being and again, and this is why to me again this has also happened. We've created this narrative that allows us to lift up mothers easily
Mm-hmm.
and makes it a task to lift up our father, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've created this narrative about mothers on a pedestal, right? And as you and I said earlier, David, nothing is wrong with that, right? We've created this narrative of mothers being superheroes and flawless and everything is okay with them, despite the fact that there are some that everything is not okay with,
I know.
right? There was a Children Authority report a few years back that spoke to mothers are the main offenders of child abuse. Listen, other than the day that was printed in the papers, David, how many people you hear talk about that in the media?
I tell you.
You are media man. How
Mhm.
many times have you heard that story being dissected like if it like other stories, right?
Yeah.
But and conversely, what we've done is we've beaten down fathers so badly that it has given the impression that all fathers are worthless and deadbeat.
Yeah.
While there are many superhero fathers among us, right? And I'm not just talking about single fathers, I'm talking about all, right? And grandfathers and so on. There are many among us. But we beat them down so bad that the image in that people are seeing is that mothers are great, fathers are the worst. And if that is what young men have to look forward to, that is what we will begin to see reflected in our society. Farid says, you all in the Single Fathers Association, God with you all every time. Blessings. You're always try the best to help fathers, but that judicial system in Trinidad is total failure, giving fathers access to be with their children. Right, so I gather you're talking about your situation here, Farid, right? She flew out to our next country when it was ordered for the child not to leave the jurisdiction, and the system not doing nothing because it's woman. I wouldn't read that part, Farid. As that brother say, they always get through. To me, enough is enough. But women do men a lot and they're not addressing nothing for men. So Farid, I suspect you're addressing a situation you're going through. When it comes to parental kidnapping, Farid, there's actually an agency in Trinidad and Tobago in the AG's office that deals with parental kidnapping as part of a convention that Trinidad and Tobago has signed on to called the Hague Convention, right? And the nations who are signed on to this convention communicate with each other, and there are particular processes and steps that must take place when there is parental kidnapping. And I'm saying that because you mentioned in there that she left with the child, it may seem, right? She gone to another country with the child. I'm not sure what country it is, and I'm not sure if the countries are part of this Hague Convention. But the name of that department is the Trinidad and Tobago Central Authority International Office of Child Rights and Civil Child Abduction, and that is in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, corner Richmond and London Street. Right? I'll post the information in the chat, and feel free to reach out to get some more information. But you need to go to that office. If you have an attorney, they should have guided you to that office to to um to make that report to that office. Okay, Jamaica. I see a message, Fred. So I'm not sure, Fred, if off the top of my head, if Jamaica is a signatory to the convention, but we could chat about it some more later on, right? I'll put the information there. But that office, right? And for anyone listening, if you're in that similar situation, that is the office you need to go to when there's parental abduction. All right. Trinidad and Tobago Central Authority, International Office of the Child Rights and Civil Child Abduction Authority, Minister of the Attorney General, corner Richmond and London Street. All right. Let me read. There's a letter a father sent to me earlier. And again, I am encouraging the men out there. If you want to call to wish your father a happy Father's Day, right? If you want to call to send a message to your child who you've been alienated from, or if your child passed away unfortunately, and you just want to share some heartfelt sentiments, the numbers to call 222-8255, the toll-free number 866-525-1099, and the WhatsApp number 318-1021.
Shervon, we have a caller on the line. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, man.
Good afternoon, brother. How are you?
What? I am okay. What we doing with today?
We're just talking about Father's Day. the appreciation of fathers, or the unappreciation of fathers, I could say. Yes, man. Just touching on all the things related to fathers. Are you a father?
Yes, sir.
And bearing
Right.
in mind that Sunday is Father's Day.
Yes. So we want to
Well,
say
I
happy
want to
Father's Day
say
to you in
first and
advance, father.
yeah.
Go
Well, I
ahead.
want to say also a happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there who trying and the ones who not trying. I still want to say happy Father's Day to them, but we need them to try a little more. But to the unjust that some of the fathers are facing, right? I want them to stay strong. When it's Mother's Day, right? Everybody know it's Mother's Day, but when it's Father's Day, nobody knows. And society has been come to like to accept this, because there's whether the business people, the sales they're having, like it's barely selling sale for us. When it's Mother's Day, everything is Mother's Day. You hear it, So I feel the pain of some men. I want to say and sympathize with them, But let me continue. So don't give up and fight the good fight.
Thank you, brother. And thank you for that word of encouragement to all the fathers out there.
Yes.
Enjoy your Father's Day this weekend.
Same from me.
Thank.
Okay, my brother.
All right. So I'm reading a letter from a father. So he says to his daughter, Via Walcott, and this is from your dad, Donald Walcott. He says, Dear Via, if somehow you are able to hear this letter being read, I love you, Mini-Me. I still have the last Father's Day card you made for me over 3 years ago, when last I saw you. I survive on the memories of us walking and playing in the savannah, especially when you tell me everything that you did. I always enjoy listening to you. I miss seeing you laugh at my stale jokes and you saying that not funny and laughing at me. I wish I could see you now, see you enjoying my cooking. I haven't seen you since you were 8 years old, and now you are 11. I could only imagine how tall you are, my Mini-Me. Remember, Daddy will always love you, Avi. Be good, okay? Thank you to the Fathers Association for reading my letter. Brother, even if your daughter doesn't see this weekend, or save this letter that you wrote, and God's willing, I pray that you do you have always been thinking of her and that you love her. Things that really, really breaks my heart, that this is how this is the only way.
Seems like
I'd like to hear Wendell and your thoughts on that while I gather mine after reading that.
well, you were breaking up for a lot of. I hope that Wendell understood what you said.
Well, I want to say, this is a case that I know of personally, and this brother has been suffering for quite some time. This man actually has a court order that gives him access to his child, and the court order has been breached continuously for the period of time that he mentioned that he has not seen his daughter, right? And there is nothing by way of the law that is being done to address the breach of this man's of this order and the alienation of this child from her father and father from the child, right? Um, it's always the court warns the woman not to breach the order, and she walks out of court and she continues to breach the order. All manner of tricks and schemes and inventions and falsifications has been used and labeled against this man. To the point where even the individual has gone to the man's job and made false allegation to make his life miserable on his job, This is the extent to which the alienating parent goes in this particular situation. And this is really a travesty, not just against another human being, but it is a travesty of the law, because the law is allowing this to continue. The law is fully aware that this is going on, and the law is allowing it. It's a travesty of justice. It is an injustice that is being carried out against this man, right? And I, in a personal capacity, knows what it is to be alienated from your father. My father, I met my father when I was 18 years old. I went in search of my father when I was 18 years old. And it turned out that my father was a good man. My father treated me well. And I was only around him for a few short years before he passed away. And I could tell you, brothers, there are times when even I am 56 years old now, and I miss my father because I didn't have him growing up. The things that I could have learned from him, I didn't learn. The things that I could have benefited from him, I did not benefit. I had a life of suffering, and I was severely set back in life, not having my father and not growing up with my father. And then when I did meet him and I did have the opportunity to be around him, it was for a very short period of time before he died. And I tell you, as a big man heading towards my senior years, I miss my dad. There are times when I sit and I say, Lord, I could really do with my father, you know. But I thank God that God has been a father to me. And you know, that pain that I feel from not having my father and being alienated from my father, at least I could still have the comfort of God, right? But something has to be done, gentlemen. Trinidad and Tobago, something has to be done. We cannot say that we have laws in place to address these situations. You know, if it was a man that was alienating the child from the mother, and the mother had a court order in her hand, the police officer, who are men, they would be living in that man's house. That man would have to live in the air for them not to find him and torment him and take away that child from him. So why then is it that when the shoe is on the other foot, nothing is being done?
You know, I really torn on by that letter that I just read, because as I said, I know the pain of going through Father's Day weekends for 18 going on 19 years now without being able to engage my daughter as a father would be able to engage a child. And I still am not able to do so in that way. I mean, things have improved drastically, thank God. But and that is one letter, right, David? That is one father who has sent that letter. Imagine all the other fathers out there who are feeling the same way and just don't know how to put the words down right. Really heartbreaking. Farid, I shared the links in the chat for you, and so you should be able to get some information there. Right? I want to switch things up a bit, and I want to go to a release by the Fathers Association a few days ago, in keeping with the Father's Day celebrations this weekend. Right? In fact, a day ago. And it says, attention all media houses. On the heels of Father's Day 2024, We are the Fathers Association call on our sitting leaders to acknowledge the significance and tantamount role of fathers in our society. For far too long, the role of father has been undervalued, seemingly unappreciated, and certainly unsupported by successive slates of leadership. We at the Fathers Association for over a decade have been persistently advocating for a conscious move by successive governments and the judiciary that would lead to key legislative reform and cultural changes that would revive the roles of fathers in our modern day society. We've presented empirical data. Where my message gone? Just so it disappear. We've presented empirical data, recorded and provided testimony of cases, and appeared before multiple joint select committees, all in an attempt to have our leaders and society at large appreciate the unaddressed challenges that have impacted the role of fatherhood in our nation over the decades. It is on the heels of Father's Day that we send out an appeal yet again to the sitting government and the judiciary to roll out the recommendations made by the Joint Select Committee that convened a hearing in 2018 on gender equality and fatherhood. Number one, the legislation of a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks paternity leave for fathers. And we've made this point abundantly clear about the need. In fact, when we had the program on paternity leave, as you guys will recall, a number of women called and messaged in that program. Only women, I think, more than men, to speak about how important it was for their partners or spouses to be with them during that time. Right? We got the caller from Canada, David, as you would recall, who had the opportunity, because she's living in Canada, for her and her husband to have parental leave, shared parental leave. And she spoke about the tremendous benefits of that to her family. Right? We went into further discussions about the benefit of that to the child and the bonds between the child and their parents. And the strain, when we looked at studies where it said that the majority of strain that happens in when people pinpointed when did their marriages start to fall apart, it started to fall apart at the point of pregnancy, during that pregnancy period, because of the strain that is on families at that time. So again, we call for parental leave. We spoke about the fathers who also lost children to that unfortunate tragedy at the Port of Spain General Hospital. Number two, the mandatory paternity testing before issuance of child maintenance orders. Rondell, you want to take that one?
Mandatory testing.
Mandatory paternity testing before issuing child maintenance orders.
I am of the view that mandatory testing should not only take place before issuing child maintenance orders, but mandatory paternity testing should be legislated and made mandatory at the birth of the child. Because in some jurisdictions, in other countries, we have paternity testing taking place when the child is born. And I think a lot of the situations that fathers have been finding themselves in this country, paying maintenance for children or for a child that is not theirs, with no form of redress when it is discovered that the child is not theirs. If we have mandatory paternity testing, these things can be avoided. A lot of situations can be avoided. And let's talk about the heartbreak again. When it is discovered that the child that the man has been taken care of and being a father to in whatever capacity that he can and paying maintenance for is not his, there's a emotional and trauma, psychological trauma, mental trauma, breakup of that family unit, as it were, because the man would have believed that the child is his own. He would have loved the child as his own. You know, he would have boasted about this child and all of these things, and now the man discovers that he is not the father. The child is not his own. The child discovers that this is not his or her father, and so you have a very traumatic situation unfolding. All of these things can be avoided, and I mean, we can see the many benefits of having paternity testing being made mandatory, Shervon. And again, it is a recommendation that was accepted, yet to date it has not been implemented. Nothing has been done.
And just to clarify for the listeners, especially where the child maintenance orders are made, why we honed in on that point, it's because child maintenance orders carry a consequence of jail time for non-payment. So we are saying, especially if an order is being made that has attached to it a consequence of depriving your constitutional rights to freedom, because if you're in prison, right, that is what is happening, that if that is the case, then there should be confirmation of paternity where such a serious judgment is going to be made.
And I want to say, Siobhan, especially in a climate where it seems like the magistrates are only too willing to send up the man to make jail serve time for the maintenance instead of employing any of the other options that are available by law, because there are other options available by law, none of which are being used. But the attitude of the court, of the judiciary, seems to be that anytime a man is in violation of paying his maintenance order, send him up. So it's as though as if it's a vindictive sort of approach, you know, punish the man, penalize the man, right? Not, the approach is not let us work with the man to see how we can resolve this matter, but rather send him up, give him pain, make him pay, right? So in light of that sort of approach, I believe that it is essential. It is of the utmost importance that this particular thing be made mandatory, especially before that maintenance order is written.
The third point is the legislation of shared parenting, shared care, and control, right? And we reference, not for the first time and not for the 100th time, a study that was commissioned by the European Union, supported or sponsored by the Emancipation Support Committee, which showed where separated, mothers and fathers both showing equal competence to have care and control over their child, the only notable difference being gender, that the courts awarded custody 66% of the time to mothers, 32% of the times to fathers, and 2% of the times was orders made for shared care and control. And we have spoken at length about what this actually means, right? Every other weekend order, which, as many would say, seems to be a go-to order from somewhere. What does every other week mean? We explained, we did the maths on that. That is 4 days a month and 48 days out of the 365 days for the year. How is a man? David spoke earlier about men being able to be role models to their children, right? Or role models to children in general. But how can a man be a mentor, a role model, a father, a friend, and all of the other things he has to be to a child when his only interaction with that child is for 48 days out of 365 days for the year? And what we are asking for is not revolutionary anymore, because there are jurisdictions around the world who have implemented shared parenting as part of their legislation, and they are reaping the benefits of it today. Right? Let me just, in Spain, there's a report here from Spain dated 2022, and it says, due to legal reforms, equal parenting time laws in Spain now apply to approximately 40% of all divorces, with likely implications for family outcomes and teenage risky behavior. Consistent with the theories of bargaining power in marriage, they have found that EPT laws, equal parenting time laws, decrease contentious divorces and increase employment of mothers relative to fathers. Additionally, and this is the key point here, guys, an analysis of drug use and family relationship among 165,000 teenagers further shows that equal parenting time laws significantly decrease risky behavior by teenagers, especially boys, who now claim to have a better relationship with their fathers. That is research, you know? That is not somebody's opinion. That is research among 165,000 teenagers. And the impact that shared parenting time, equal parenting time, they call it in this journal, had on the lives of these teenagers. What do we see in Trinidad and Tobago? Are we not seeing risky behavior being demonstrated by our teenagers and our young men and women? And we have said that if we put shared parenting laws on our books, that we will see a turnaround in time with the level of delinquency we are seeing among our youths. Right? Wendell, go ahead first before I go to the next point. Or David. All right, let me move on.
Wendell, your mic is muted. You have to unmute.
All right, well, I'll carry on. Wendell probably getting some challenges. So it goes on to say, this is our release. It is our firm view that where parents meet balance, competence, and safety standards, that children be allowed the opportunity to spend balanced amount of time with both their parents. This way, both parents will be allowed suitable time to play an active role in the development academically and socially of their children. Right? Made another important point, shared parenting eradicates the needs for the issuance of maintenance orders, as both parents are expected to secure the financial needs of their children. And again, we went through at length the cost to the state and the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago to fund the current form of maintenance and enforcement for non-payment. We spoke at length as to how a warrant is generated and all the different expensive resources that have to be a part of this process, including the court, who we know has a heavy burden, including the police, who we know has a heavy burden, including the prisons, who we know have a heavy burden, including the coffers of the state, which the government is now saying is under pressure. So the release is on our Facebook page. A couple other points there, I wouldn't go through all of them now. But again, we've advocated for these things repeatedly, and we continue to call on those in authority to let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. We have the reports to show. We have the studies to show, to support that this will have a positive impact and effect on our society. This is not just about playing house. We're not making noise here to get a child. No, there's going to be a positive impact on our society. We have to move away from this winner take all system, because the child is ending up the biggest loser in this situation, and the society as a result is paying a heavy price for it, where we have children growing up in these broken homes where fathers are not allowed to, even when they want to, in many cases are not allowed to, because of the roadblocks that are set up in the system. Wendell, are you back?
No, his mic is still muted. Let me see.
Yes, gentlemen.
Yes,
Okay, right. I was asking you if you wanted to contribute to what I was saying, Wendell, before I move on.
With regards to which one of your points, bro?
I was speaking to, firstly, shared parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Right.
the point about
So
benefits of shared parenting.
you know, I am a proponent for shared parenting because at the end of the day, if we had shared parenting, I mean, in my own personal case with my last son, the 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 the, the, the recommendation of the probation officer was actually that shared parenting would have been in the best interest of my son, right? And I mean, any sensible individual can tell you that if the two parents are not at war with each other and that they are willing to work together amicably, shared parenting is a good solution and is in the best interest of the child, because like I would have mentioned in our last meeting, when you give custody of the child to one parent and you give access of every other weekend um to the father, that effectively removes that child from the life of the paternal side of the family, right? And remember, I spoke about the many benefits that a child would have growing up around grandpa and granny. You know, there in a lot of instances, you know, children that are close to their grandparents often bless them with a house, with land, or buy their first car for them, and all of these sorts of things. These children who are in that sort of situation are robbed of these things because every other weekend is just not sufficient time to build a relationship with the paternal relatives, right? And so shared parenting would solve some of these issues and some of these concerns, and be of greater benefit to the child or the children in these situations. Not only that, if you have shared parenting, like you would have said, Shervon, shared parenting would effectively eliminate the need for maintenance orders to be written, because it would mean that the child is living with the mother 50% of the time and with the father 50% of the time. So that you take care of the child when the child is with you, and I take care of the child when the child is with me. And so the child's need would be met at both homes, right? But there seems to be in Trinidad the ideology that, you know, this whole maintenance thing, as far as I am concerned, the approach of this maintenance thing is that the woman is entitled to money. And they want to make sure, it seems like the judiciary just want to make sure that the woman is getting some money, so they refuse. Because even in my situation, I said, okay, if you want me to pay a maintenance for my child, just give me my child. I'm fully capable. I just finished raising 3 children by myself. I am able to raise. I have a track record of raising good children, of producing excellence, of producing well-rounded children, of producing highly educated children. So it's no problem for me. Give me my child. I wouldn't have to pay no maintenance. And so shared parenting would eliminate some of these quarrels and some of these difficulties and some of these issues that exist. So I agree with you, Shervon, with regards to that.
And it's archaic thinking, and Wendell, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, where yes, for a time and a season, a long time and season, men were the breadwinners, and women were stay at home, right? The caretakers, stay at home wives in some cases, and caretakers, right? And so in those instances, when there was a separation, right? It in that season of our society, that was what was required. Because the role of women, when those things may have been crafted, was very different than the role of women today.
So, so
Right?
what you're saying is that the people who are in authority, they don't have any sense. They can't see. They can't see that what was applicable then is not applicable now, and that the laws need to be changed or amended. So when we dealing with dunce, then
Well, then you'll get in trouble and make me and David get thrown off the air. And you. But I hear you, Wendell, and I hear frustration, right? Because this is supposed to be common sense. I have no PhD in this. This is common sense we're talking about here. Right?
bro, you
And you
don't need a PhD. You
yeah,
don't need a PhD to know that a law that was written back in 1960 something or 1970 something needs to be revisited and amended and changed to meet the current
the
day.
current society. Yeah,
Exactly. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that. That's common sense.
yeah. Society has changed. It has changed. And whereas as our as and some of you all spoke about it, as a father in that time, right? The role was really providing. And so you would hear men of old talk about, in some cases, right? Not all, but in some cases, you would hear them talking about, yes, their father coming home, and but not having that type of relationship that you see fathers have with their children today, right? You didn't have that type of interaction where you going where we going now, and we going and play football with the child and play cricket with children, and we out rampling and wrestling and playing video game with them. And that society has changed. And so now our laws must reflect what our society is presently. And the things I don't understand, it changing for everything else, Wendell and David. David made mention to LGBT things and all those things now. It changing, policies changing, educational curriculums changing. Everything is changing to match the changing needs, the changing look at the society, except the role of men, fathers in the society. Except that.
But Shervon, what gets me about this whole thing? Okay, so let's say that the legislators, the politicians, they don't have the vision, or they don't have the foresight, or they just don't have the sense to understand that these things need to be addressed. What about the judiciary? What about the magistrates and the judges and the judicial these holders of high judicial positions? I would expect that these people are highly educated, and that these people would be students of the current needs. They would understand the current needs of a society. So even though legislatively it is not being addressed, I mean, there is judicial discretion. So when someone comes before you and a matter needs to be addressed, the law gives you discretion as a magistrate or a judge to make a ruling that is in the best interest of the child in the current day society. You don't have to stick to the letter of the law, because the spirit of the law is what is important.
I know some legal minds may debate with us on that point about what is the discretion that they do have. But you know, Wendell, I want to shift a little bit, right? Because I don't want to not discuss. I mean, just have 15 minutes again. The mental health of men during and fathers over this weekend, right? And I'm reading from a survey here. It's It's a 2023 article where 1,600 dads were surveyed, right? And it says, overall findings indicate that many dads are hurting and need more support. And when it comes to mental health, many fathers are struggling, right? Of those surveyed, 2 in 3 dads said that they have been at least moderately stressed in the last 30 days, and 43% of dads say at least half of their stress is related to childcare, with 62% saying the pressure to provide for their family is a major stressor. And it goes on to speak to why, right? And it encapsulates a very interesting story here where a wife is who disarmed, I would say, or got her husband to open up and go to counseling and recognize how much pressure and stress he was under. The same way as her, because he's trying to, as well, he's managing the home as well, right? They husband and wife, and they're running a home. But she picked up and realized, thank God, that she has the support networks in place to help her deal with the stress that she is dealing with. But because of the way society has crafted things for men, he doesn't, right? And even when he does, he don't even know where to turn. And so that is a very serious point, because as I said, we've spoken about the suicide statistics in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't even have to go abroad, right, to get a number to talk about how terrible the suicide stats are. Right? I made reference to an article a few programs back where in 2019 we had 92 suicides, 2020 104 suicides, 2021 128 suicides, and men represented approximately 80% of that figure, right? 80% of that figure. And to me, that speaks to exactly what this article is talking about, where it says that many dads are hurting and need more support. And I heard Rondell on our program earlier this week talking about the topic of parental leave and the fathers who are part of the families who lost loved ones in Port of Spain General Hospital recently, those babies that passed away. And he was saying in that article, in that program, he was saying that these men who do not have paternity leave, after bereavement leave, which is just about 5 days, I think it is, in the public service, they have to go back to work. Right? They have to go back to work, while the mother who is in the same situation gets the full duration of her maternity leave, sorry. Right? The full duration of her maternity leave, which off the top of my head could be about 13 or 14 weeks, don't quote me on it, right? About 3 months and a week. The mother gets her full maternity leave, even though the children passed away, and has the time to be able to address her mental health coming out of this traumatic situation. Daddy, on the other hand, had to opt and go back to work and deal with what is in front of him in life. So when we ask the question, well, why are men so stressed, and why men taking their life so much, and why? But we have programs out there. So daddy had to go to work and go to the program. That's what daddy had to do. Right? He had to focus on the job at hand, make sure and do it properly. Right? And go to the program and come back to work. What is it? What are we missing in the narratives that we've been giving? What are we missing in the stories that we've been telling? Where's the disconnect? And why can't we understand that fathers need the same support as well? And the same avenue and the same time? Where we missing that, Rondell and David?
Well, again, it comes back to the same point where the focus is on primarily on the females in society, and the needs of men are neglected. So, I mean, when we see men becoming drug abusers and abusers of alcoholism and other type of abuses, everybody's up in arms, and we look at men as monsters, and we have all sort of derogatory things to say about men, criticize men for the coping mechanisms that they are using. But we fail fail to recognize the fact, or we just neglect the fact that the needs of the women are being addressed, but men hurt too. Men cry too. Men suffer too. The same thing that affects women, as in the case of the tragedy with the children dying, the fathers are suffering too. They are hurting as well. They need counseling. They need interventions, whether it be psychological, psychiatric, or otherwise. They need intervention as well. But we see that consistently, again, the legislators have failed to recognize, or even if they do recognize, because they don't have to go out and do any research on their own. The research has already been done for them, and the evidence has been presented, the recommendations have been made. So they don't have to go out and do nothing. We have already presented them with the evidence. So they are simply refusing to do anything about it. And we need to know, we need answers. We need to know, why are they continuously and consistently refusing to address these things that we have been asking them to address.
Yep. And I'm saying to our listeners, listen, let go of your party cards for a moment, right? Let go of your partisan politics. Let go. Take off the blinders, because some of you listen to us through the filters of your political affiliations. And if we say something one way, say them is PNM. If we say something the other way, say them is UNC. Take off the filters and hear what we are saying to you all. We need to stand together as a society. We need to stand together, mothers and fathers. We need to stand together as a society, because we are raising broken children, right? Put aside we for the sweetness of the flesh, we put aside with differences and brought a child or children into this world. And now for their well-being, we can't put aside our emotional baggage and our emotional hurts. We go and get help with the aim of putting it aside to co-parent with the father of your child or with the mother of your child to raise that child. Our society is depending on it. Forget about your race, right? Forget about religious persuasions. We need to come together as one. And no matter how, I don't blame these politicians anymore. I said that some weeks ago. I blame us, because we are the ones as a people who are not standing up. We are the ones not coming together. We are the ones not calling them out. So we have to take the blame for what we get. You didn't hear one of them say some years ago, and they didn't riot yet? They just say out loud what is being in the mind. We have to come together, Trinidad and Tobago, if we want to see a change. The jurisdictions around the world that you hear us referring to, Spain, right? the states within the United States that have passed shared parenting laws, most recent being Missouri, which we touched on, they came together and advocated for those changes. The politicians didn't wake up one morning and had a conscience. That never happened. Right? The politicians didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, let me give black people the rights, yes? Civil Rights Act passed. No. People pounded the pavements and people bled and people died. We are not going to get a change if we fail to come together. Nothing is going to change. Wendell, we just have a few more minutes. I'm gonna give you some any closing remarks. We just have 4 more minutes.
Right. So my phone is dying on me there, so I have to make it real quick. I want to agree with what Shervon said there. Election season is coming again, right? They're going to be coming to your homes to shake your hand, to kiss your babies, and to make promises. If I get elected, and recently I saw a meme out with a wolf saying to the sheep, if I get elected, I promise to be a vegetarian, right? And that is exactly what they have been doing to us consistently for years. It's time you all move the wool that has been pulled over your eyes and vote in the best interest of our people and of our country. I am not being political here. I want you all to understand that. I want the people to understand that we have to demand proper representation. We have to demand accountability. We have to demand that those who we put there take responsibility, and our society is suffering. Our children are suffering, our fathers are suffering, and our mothers are suffering too. Right? So I just want to encourage Trinidad and Tobago, please stop the tribal behavior, and vote in the best interest of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendell. And I say, even before you vote, demand your representation. Say to them, I am not hearing in your policies, I am not hearing my issues. I'm not hearing about paternity leave. I'm not hearing about shared parenting. I'm not hearing about men's mental health. I'm not hearing anything about men's health. We had to demand that. Within our medical, within our medical system, there's a position called the Director of Women's Health. Former colleague of mine, excellent doctor, an excellent human being, right? That post was created by the Ministry of Health. Is there a Director of Men's Health? I don't know. And if there is, it's very silent. But these are the things we as a people need to demand. We need to stand up and demand those things. I want to say Happy Father's Day again to all the fathers of Trinidad and Tobago and around the world. Enjoy the time, enjoy the day you have with your families this weekend. I also, again, special heartfelt Father's Day to all the fathers who, like me, who may not have either one of your children or none of your children with you physically this Father's Day because of parental alienation. And also those fathers who have lost children. We want to express our condolences and sympathies to you all and let you all know that you are in our prayers. Power 102, thank you all very much as always for creating the space for men, for fathers, for their voices to be heard. And David, thank you as always for being a gracious host. And happy Father's Day to you as well.
Yeah, thank you to my brother, and thank you for helping me to be the host.
Yeah, happy Father's Day, David, and happy Father's Day to all our listeners.
Yeah, same to you, Wendell, and all the fathers who are locked on and those who are just out there enjoying the Father's Day on Sunday. God's blessing to all of you.
God bless, brothers. Take care.
Yes, man. That's it for today's edition of Fathers Association here at Power 102 Digital every Friday around the same time, 4:15 till 6. You can log on at Power 102 Digital. We stream live on YouTube and Facebook. and you can follow the program minute by minute. So until next Friday, be good. And like we said, happy Father's Day.